Hi everybody and welcome to the DRF Breeding Report. I'm Dan Illman along with Nicole Russo, and this is part 2 of our 3-part series focusing on the Beyer Sire Performance Ratings, perhaps a better metric than rating stallions than your traditional earnings system. And Nicole, we talked a little bit about how earnings can be a bit misleading. Let's recap for some folks that might have missed part 3 of our 3-part series.
Well, sure. I mean, as you mentioned, the earnings lists, which have long time been the metric used to evaluate standings, a lot of different factors playing into those now. Of course, at the higher levels, you have giant purses for races like the Pegasus, the Dubai World Cup, the Breeders' Cup Classic out there. Even at the lower levels, you have some tracks or some circuits where you get perhaps inflated purses from slots or bonuses or other factors. So the Beyer standings offer a little bit more context into really breaking down a stallion season, particularly because they're assigned to all horses in a race. I really think it gives you a bit of a broader base for a stallion's performance rather than earnings factors, which can be skewed by, 1 or 2 or 3 horses at the top.
3 horses on the top 10 sires by North American earnings list: 2nd Unbridled Song, 7th Ghost Sapper, 10th Into Mischief. Quality stallions. But as we roll into the top 10 sires by total Beyer races of 90 or more, we see that those horses are not on the list. They are replaced by Warfront, who's not even on the top 10 in earnings list, Giants Causeway, who we'll get to in a little bit, and the late great Scat Daddy, who is in 8th place. So we see right here sires that may not get the recognition from the earnings list, but these stallions, they throw nothing but runners, it appears, at least from a quality Beyer standpoint of 90 or greater.
Right, absolutely. And these lists are now available in a sortable online format at drf.com. You can really take a look, via various categories, various surfaces, various distances, and really get a bit of a broader base of knowledge regarding certain stallions.
Various divisions as well. You can rank it by 2-year-olds, turf, 3-year-olds. I think it's a very valuable tool, not only for breeders that might be looking for sort of a value stallion that can throw a runner, but for handicappers that are looking in races where there might be first-time starters or horses trying turf for the first time. Obviously, those 2-year-old races are already a puzzle. This might give you a sort of sense of what stallions excel in certain situations. And I want to begin our conversation on some of the individual stallions with the 6th horse on our list, and that is Malibu Moon. 6th on the earnings list, 6th in the Beyer Sire list, and as usual, Malibu Moon just had a great year. He gets all sorts of runners, whether it's a Kentucky Derby winner like Orb or a sprinter. His highest Beyer performer in 2017, Ransom the Moon.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things about the year Malibu Moon had in 2017 was he did so well with his 2-year-olds, particularly the fillies. Last year's 2-year-olds of 2017, the foals of 2015, resulting from the mares that Malibu Moon got in the season after Orb won the Kentucky Derby in 2013. Really, Malibu Moon got a little bit of a commercial boost in the aftermath of that. He saw his sales results for his young horses tick up a bit, got a good book of mares in 2014, and last year on the track, he had Grade 1 winning 2-year-old fillies, Moonshine Memories, who's an Eclipse finalist, Heavenly Love, who won the Alcibiades at Keeneland, and Gray Vito, it's multiple stakes winning 2-year-old, who we might see in the Kentucky Derby trail a bit later in the spring as he bounces back from a setback. Really good 2-year-olds last year for Malibu Moon. I think he's got a lot to look forward to in the next couple of years here with the kind of mares he got after he broke through with his Derby win.
The progeny of Malibu Moon earned Beyer speed figures of 90 or greater in 61 races. 7 of those races, Beyer speed figures of 100 or greater. Let's move to Candy Ride, who topped the top 10 sire list by North American earnings. He can give a big thank you to Gun Runner, his highest Beyer performer, who will likely be named Horse of the Year in a week or 2. But Candy Ride 5th on the top 10 sire list with 65 races in which his progeny earned Beyer speed figures of 90 or greater. So you can say to some extent that Gun Runner kind of carried the load a bit.
Right, you certainly can. I mean, certainly Gun Runner with his runner-up effort in the Dubai World Cup, with his win in the Breeders' Cup Classic, he certainly fueled Candy Ride from an earnings perspective. He threw down a number of the year's top buyers, but Candy Ride really far from a one-hit wonder. He also had Ascend, who was a Grade 1 winner on turf. He had the Grade 1 winning 2-year-old filly Separation of Powers. He also, of course, had Mastery, who unfortunately suffered that career-ending injury in his dominant win in the San Felipe earlier in the year, which was the top buyer for a 3-year-old male all through the spring prep season, all through Triple Crown season, into late in the year. And Mastery, really, who knows how good he could have been. Candy Ride, I think, is very interesting because he's an outcross to so many good American bloodlines. He'll have, of course, Gun Runner going to stud this year at Three Chimneys, Mastery going to stud this year at Claiborne, and I'm really interested to see how this storyline sort of continues to develop with Candy Ride.
Candy Ride, 11% of his runners from starters, from his horses from starters, earn 90-plus Beyer speed figures. That's impressive, but not as good as a horse that might have slipped through the cracks a little bit in 2017. Giant's Causeway did not make the top 10 in North American earnings, but he landed 4th as his progeny earned Beyer speed figures of 90 or greater in 76 races. 13% of his starters earned Beyer speed figures of 90 or greater. Giant's Causeway, so versatile when his horses get an opportunity to mature and stretch out in distance, whether it be dirt or turf. And his highest Beyer performers, Destin, a marathoner on the dirt, Night Prowler, a good turf horse.
Yeah, definitely a versatile horse. Destin classic place, last year, coming back to run well as an older horse this year. Another turf horse, of course, Giant's Causeway, champion on turf in Europe before coming over here and running that great second in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's played off that versatility to sire champions in a number of countries. And really, I do think Giant's Causeway has kind of become the forgotten horse in the American stallion ranks. He's so good. He's so consistent. It seems like every time you turn around, he has another horse running well in a stakes. I think, this is another example of why the Beyer Sire standings are important, because they do account for those second-place finishers, third-place finishers, horses that are so consistent like this. Every time you turn around, Giant's Causeway is the broodmare sire of another good horse. Of course, he's the broodmare sire of Gun Runner. And he had a multi-year run on top of the North American sire list before Capit really broke through. And, I do think Giant's Causeway has become a bit of a forgotten horse. But not because of anything he's done wrong. He's just a wonderful, consistent, solid sire. You're
absolutely right. Consistently excellent is the best way to describe Giant's Causeway, who finished 4th on the top 10 sire list by Beyer races of 90 or greater in 2017. Next week, we will conclude our series with the top 3, including Warfront, who didn't make the top 10 sire list by earnings, but boy, did his horses fire time and time again on the racetrack. You can follow Nicole on Twitter at DRF Russo, and all of the latest breeding news and notes on Twitter at DRF Breeding. We'll see you next week on the DRF Breeding Report.